All right. Welcome, everybody, to another off-street webinar. Today's topic is consumer trends and what this means for parking in 2025. We're super excited to have you all here with us again today. We're just going to give it a few seconds, as usual, while folks are getting settled in. So in the meantime, please feel free to let us know in the chat down below where you're all joining us from today. I'm personally located in Regina, Saskatchewan at the off-street headquarters. Weather is looking up. It's only -9 today, so minimal complaints on that. Now, before we kick things off and get into the real content, I'll start by introducing myself. So if this is your first webinar, my name is Kyle, and I'm a marketing specialist here on the off-street team. If you have any questions that come up during the session, please, we definitely encourage you to drop those down in the Q&A section. And we'll make sure that we get to those in the Q&A session at the end. So over the next 15 minutes or 20 minutes or so, we'll cover key parking trends, what they mean for your operations, and some practical strategies for staying ahead. So be warned, there may be some hard lessons and some even harder truths. The first being that unfortunately, Brick Fraser, who was originally slotted to be in today's webinar, is unable to make it as he was selected to fulfill his civic duty of jury duties. But don't worry, we have someone just as knowledgeable and just as good looking. So without further ado, I'll kind of get into introducing our two people here today. So first up, we've got the man, the myth, the mastermind, our CEO and co-founder, Matt Fallman. If Offstreet were a movie, Matt would be the director, the producer, and the guy making sure we don't accidentally set the set on fire. He's the big picture visionary, keeping us all on track, leading Offstreet into an exciting 2025. So buckle up because when Matt's in the driver's seat, big ideas and even bigger reveals are guaranteed. Thanks for joining us today, Matt. And next, backed by popular demand, we have the unstoppable force that turns strategy into reality, our senior product manager, Melanie Lair. If Offshoot's product were a symphony, Melanie would be the conductor, making sure that every feature hits just the right note. She's the one making sure our tech isn't just functional, it's also fantastic. So thank you, Mel. If there's any feature you love, and I know I'm sure there is, you can thank Mel for that. Now get ready because these two are about to take us on a journey we didn't know we needed, but we'll be very much grateful for. Thank you, Matt and Mel, for being here today. Let's kind of get into it. Something I'll start off with is just saying this to kind of set the scene. So the parking industry is evolving rapidly, as I'm sure everyone here on the call knows. Parking teams are at very different stages of digital adoption. So some are fully digital, some are, transitioning, and some are even just starting this kind of digital adoption. But wherever you are, just be noted and kind of be mindful today that these trends that we're going to focus on, they impact you, whether it's, at any stage that you're on. We'll kind of dive into our first key trend or consumer trend that we've identified today. The first being frictionless and contactless checkouts. So a key data point that I'd say highlights this shift is that 85% of consumers now prefer contactless payments over cash. So that's a big stat. This preference isn't just about convenience, it's about speed, security, and aligning with the digital first experiences that people are used to in like those different aspects of their lives, aka being on their phones, something I'm very guilty of. But with that in mind, and this stat in mind, let's dive into our first kind of few questions here. Matt, I'll aim this one right at you. How have consumer expectations changed, and how is that impacting parking?
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Kyle. Happy to be here. Sorry to anyone who was disappointed by my face and not seeing Brick, but unfortunately, he did have to fulfill his civic duty. So, to the actual question, I think over the past few years, we've seen a major shift in consumer behavior. I think a lot of this was driven largely by the pandemic towards digital contactless experiences. And there's a lot of this is outside of parking, but does apply to our industry. In hospitality, for example, QR codes effectively replaced physical menus overnight. hotels are now offering mobile app room keys instead of checking in with a physical card. You see like McDonald's investing millions of dollars into self-serve kiosks where you can put your order without actually interacting with the staff. Um, I think similarly in our industry, parking has seen a huge decline in the number of cash payments, massive rise in mobile payments, and a push for frictionless entry and exit. I think the shift means that parking managers who are still relying on manual, hardware-based solutions do risk falling behind. Consumers today expect convenience and ease of use. And if a parking experience is frustrating, they will look for alternatives.
Totally good note on that. I think when you mentioned that frictionless experience, I see those parking spots at McDonald's where you don't even have to go in. You just pick up, you can park there and you're in and out in seconds. So good note on that. Mel, I kind of aim this next question at you. What can you say about the transition from pay and display to pay by plate?
Good question, Kyle. And Kyle, I have made use of those McDonald's stalls, I will say. Yeah, so the shift from pay and display to pay by plate, I think, has been a game changer, both on the consumer side and for parking managers. For consumers, instead of requiring drivers to go to a machine, get this physical pass, go back to their car, put their pass on their dashboard, pay by plate really allows them to just enter their license plate using a mobile app or kiosk. And then their parking session is linked directly to their vehicle. I think this is huge for consumers. They don't have to worry about lost passes or receipts. I'm sure we've all been there. They simply park and go. And then on the parking manager side, I think there's lots of benefits. It enables better enforcement through LPR. It also reduces paper waste and those maintenance costs for their teams. There's no more printing and distributing passes, which we've heard can be a full-time job. And then they also don't have to maintain ticket dispensers or deal with lost or stolen permits. And so we've done a lot of work with clients as they've transitioned to pay by plate, and we've seen that it's made a big difference in their operations.
We'd probably say that pay and display is giving grandpa energy, while the pay by plate is like the Apple Pay of parking. And we can all see how successful Apple Pay has been over time. And I think we all love that. But that's something to keep in mind. So good. Thanks for that, Mel. Matt, are there any trends you've noticed as a result of shifting consumer expectations?
Yeah, I think we've seen that like forward-thinking operators are reducing friction by reducing their reliance on hardware. Instead of expensive gate arms and pay stations and meters, they are turning to mobile solutions that allows for seamless entry and exit. And even if you kind of disagree with that sentiment, if you actually look at the vendors in the space, you've seen a lot of the hardware companies making big investments into software and like text-to-pay based solutions. You even see like Toledo Ticket, which is one of the longest lasting companies in our industry. I think they're founded like 1910. They basically would sell physical permits and tickets. They bought a software company a couple of years ago and are just pivoting their business into that industry to try to future-proof it. So I think it's coming whether you agree or not. A concrete example would be like pre-registration, allowing users to book a space in advance, just like they would, a hotel room, so they don't have to fumble with payment when they arrive. And for those who prefer on-site registration, the goal is to make it as intuitive as possible. Quick QR scans, tap to pay, very clear signage. I think a key takeaway is that the few barriers between a parker and their space, the better. As we all kind of know, the best parking experience is one that you don't think about.
Right. So I'd say like my overall takeaway from these first few questions or this first kind of trend we've been diving into is hardware light is therefore going to equal a better customer experience maybe, and essentially people have phones and they want to use them, right? It's at their fingertips. So that's, I'd say, a key takeaway that people can kind of jot down or kind of keep in the back of their head. But we're going to kind of shift into the next trend I'd say that we've identified, which is parking flexibility. Another major shift we're seeing in regards to parking needs is that commuters are looking for more flexibility. So with hybrid work schedules and crazy travel patterns or things like that, I'd say those rigid monthly permits don't always make sense anymore. So a key data point that we've identified shows that 60% of commuters would prefer flexible parking options over fixed monthly permits. Huge stat, once again. This highlights the need for solutions that adapt different schedules or adapt to different schedules like daily or hourly options. So let's explore this a little bit further. I'll aim this one at Matt first. What sorts of flexible solutions are you seeing?
Yeah, I think in many industries, consumers do expect flexibility, whether that's remote work, subscription-based services, dynamic pricing. Same logic applies to parking. Instead of fixed monthly, daily, semester, or annual permits, a lot of managers are adopting flexible models that let parkers pay for only what they're actually using. We even work with a handful of universities who don't offer long-term permits anymore. They just do kind of daily. So we're seeing a massive rise in dynamic permits that adjust based on a parker's actual needs rather than a one-size-fits-all approach, which I think not only improves customer satisfaction, but also can be used to optimize space utilization for operators and encourage turnover and more revenue.
Yeah, totally. I love the idea of customization. I think for me, there's nothing worse than being forced to pay for a day's worth of parking when in reality, I'm only going to be there for an hour or something like that. And yeah. Um, Next question here, I'll kind of pop over to Mel. What do we see coming from off street that can support this flexibility?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Like Matt said, consumers are the ones pushing for this more flexibility, and then in turn, we've seen a lot of our clients or who are super innovative push for more flexible solutions on our end. We're really lucky to work with them. If you're an off-street customer, you might have seen our one-year roadmap that we rolled out in January, and I think one of the biggest roadmap themes is flexibility. We're doubling down on a rules engine, which is already really powerful, and adding functionality that will really allow a wider variety of permit types. And so, one example of this is adding multi-interval, multi-location, and multi-rate support to permits. And I know that's a bit of a mouthful, but let's say you're providing parking for a big conference at a convention center. In this case, you could configure a parking option for a premium lot close to the venue and another for a remote lot with a shuttle service and with different pricing for those. You could then make different lots available on different days of the conference based on capacity. Um, so, like, when we lay these features out, these will provide a lot of benefits to parking managers to choose when and where they want to park based on what's best suited for them instead of being locked into that one size fits all permit like Matt was talking about. We're really excited to roll out these enhancements. I would say if you're interested in learning more, feel free to reach out to us. I think Kyle will be sharing some contact information at the end of the webinar here.
Yeah, so big things coming. That's good to know. Maybe you guys can write that down too. But I'd say the takeaway then maybe from this kind of trend or this thing that we've noticed with flexibility is that if we're writing things down, consumers expect parking to fit their schedules and needs, not the other way around. So that's kind of a good way, I guess, to look at that as a whole. Um, but I'll shift over now to our third trend that we've kind of discovered here, and that is the idea of Parker autonomy. So maybe this is a new term to a lot of people, but I have kind of a not necessarily a stat, but more of a fact that consumers are generally much further along on the adoption curve. I think we can all agree on that when it comes to technology, right? For example, as again, the phones, everyone has a phone, and they have the world at their fingertips. So I think it makes sense that we touch on the idea of Parker autonomy. And Matt, I'll kind of start the question with you. What is Parker autonomy?
Yeah, kind of a not the best word for it, but basically what we're trying to convey is that consumers prefer to research, compare, make decisions on their own terms. If you just think about how people shop for cars today versus 30 years ago, they're going to browse listings online, they're going to read a bunch of reviews. A lot of them will purchase without actually going to a dealership or even talking to like a salesperson. Look at like digital reviews and the amount of online shopping. A lot of people prefer to do their own homework, make their decision, and not have to interact with like a salesperson. So I think how that relates to our industry is that in parking, parkers do want upfront pricing, very clear rules, and the ability to manage their own sessions digitally without interacting with an attendant. And I think that parking managers who are providing this level of transparency and control are going to attract more customers while reducing operational inefficiencies.
Right. Good note on the kind of the trend of shopping, I'd say, being a lot more less going to the kind of brick and mortar stores. How many people bought a Cybertruck online without even the car existing yet? But so good note on that. What solutions, Mel, I'll aim this one at you. What solutions are out there that support this idea of Parker autonomy?
Yeah, we're really seeing the industry respond to this trend. Like Matt is saying, parking is becoming increasingly self-sufficient for consumers. Um, Matt did touch on a few of them, but a lot of enhancements we're seeing from the vendor side, including ourselves, is really a focus on better communication tools within permitting systems. Uh, for example, we've seen interactive maps and custom pin dropping features that help guide parkers from their home to the parking spot and then from the parking spot to the end destination. Some other cool features, we've seen some that allow parkers to add custom instructions within the app itself, providing easy access to those important parking details, reducing the need for direct support. We know when we talk to our clients, if they're hosting a huge parking event, support calls is a really big pain point for them. So anything we can do to help reduce that is important to us. I think we'll be seeing many more of these feature types as consumers push for more autonomy.
Yeah. Essentially, we, the Parkers, are much more self-sufficient if we just have the right tools, I think, is what I'm pulling from that. Like, throw me that how not to get towed starter pack and we're good to go. Matt, maybe the next question, I'll throw this to you. How can parking autonomy benefit parking teams?
Yeah, I think like Parker autonomy isn't just good for consumers, it does benefit operators and managers as well. When you provide parkers with clear upfront information, then that's going to reduce the amount of times they're phoning your support or having to flag down an attendant, all of which is going to reduce your strain on staff and allow your team to focus on higher value add tasks. I also think self-service options like mobile payments and digital reservations do increase efficiency while improving customer satisfaction. Um, in general, like the more seamless and autonomous the parking experience, the better it is for everyone involved. I said it before, but I'll say it again. Best parking experience is the one you don't think about because it just worked.
Yeah, totally. So diving back into our notepad here, if we're writing things down, for parking or for Parker autonomy, Parkers want more control over their parking experience. And I think what we can do is provide them more info, but also more valuable info that they're going to use. So jotting that down. I'll kind of close off this section of me asking you guys questions with a little bit of a lesson. Remember earlier I said there's some hard truths coming. This might be one of them, or more of just like a lesson. Um, I'd say more of a key lesson, I think, of the key trends that we've looked at today. But to continue adapting with consumer trends, responsibility falls on both the vendors and parking teams. We have to be committed to building features that support, a variety of stakeholders, including the end parkers. But I think it's also important for parking teams to realize that they need to prioritize processes that provide a better experience for their guests. So I'll kind of leave that to sit with the audience, anyone here on the call today, as like a lesson or a major takeaway. Maybe write that down in your book if you're writing things down. But while that's kind of syncing with you, our Zoom wizard in the background we'll drop another poll here on the screen. We want to know, which of the following trends do you see as the biggest priority for your parking operations in the next year? So you'll see those three kind of trends that we talked about today, and let us know which one you think you can, or you are maybe even prioritizing this year. But if anyone has questions, I hope people maybe have been dropping them in the chat, hopefully down in the Q&A section. It is time to kind of get into that Q&A section for today. Reminder to put those down in the Q&A feature. If we run out of time to answer them all here in the webinar, we'll make sure to reach out to you and answer your question afterwards. But now is the time where we'll maybe get into questions. I see one in the chat right now from Megan R. Will there be a feature telling users their parking is going to expire? I'll throw that
I
to Matt.
can jump in with this one. Thanks, Megan. Short answer, yes, and actually good news. We have the first version of this live in the app today. It's specifically for our event feature, and so if you're a current user, you'll see that today. And then we have some more versions planned for later in the year, including text notifications as well. So excited about that.
Awesome. Thank you for the question, Megan. There might be more. I'm hoping I'm not missing any in the chat. I see lots of conversation, which is good. But if you do have questions, definitely drop those in the Q&A function. I know there was maybe a question I had, maybe was things that people are talking about lots lately. I've heard people talking about the QR codes. I know we talked about that a little bit today. The trend of like maybe QR code scam or fraud popping up lots. What was maybe your thoughts on that?
Yeah, happy to jump in. I just noticed Whitney had a quick follow-up to the question from Mel. So Whitney, basically what we have today is sending an email to the parker. What we're scoping out is sending a text message via SMS, and I think that will be later this year, but the email to the parker is live now. Sorry, your question, Kyle, was about QR code scams. Yeah, so this is one that I think has come up a lot, and I don't know if it's always based in reality. I think there's more concerns around QR code scams than necessarily there should be. When I first heard of these scams happening, I was looking into them, and I assumed they would be like very sophisticated, where someone would build a landing page that looks identical to something like our page or Park Mobile's page, and then they'd get a credit card from that. But what it really was people would just paste over a QR code, a link to like a Venmo cash transfer app. This is not sophisticated, and like if the consumer had just read the signage and applied a bit of common sense, they probably wouldn't have fallen for it. So I don't think there is a lot of resources going towards sophisticated QR code scams. And I think if your signage is really clear, basically saying that, when you scan this code, it'll look to a page that looks like this. Make sure you're checking the URL. You're going to produce 99% of instances of fraud on that one.
Yeah, that's a good note on that. Brad Heaton has a question, just kind of on something that we touched on earlier a little bit. Did you discuss the multi-day event feature and when that will be released? Mel, I believe you chatted about that there.
Yeah, I can recap quickly, Brad. Multi-day will definitely be a part of it, but we'll also be integrating multi-location and multi-rate support into it too. So it'll give you a lot of flexibility to set up different permit options, say for event or in other user groups. I'll send you a follow-up email after the webinar. I'd love to connect and hear how it could be useful for you.
Awesome. Okay, Megan R is wondering if we'll be able to add more than one plate to permits.
Yes, we will.
Ooh. Okay, good. Nice and quick. I like it, Mel. Joe Camerata in the chat here. Do you offer or partner with any LPR hardware options? Can you comment on the cost difference of gated versus camera based?
Yeah, I can jump in on this one. We personally do not sell LPR cameras, but we do have API integrations and partnerships with a bunch of different companies in that space. Genetec, Gtechna, a host of others, some smaller ones too. Fortunately, in our business, building API integrations with other enforcement tools like LPR is really straightforward for the most part. We've already done, I think we announced that we had 28 live, but basically, so if you guys were looking at a system that we don't currently integrate with, it's very likely we would be able to integrate with them. And we're definitely open to that because I think it makes our product more robust. So, and then I think the second part of your question was a comment on the cost difference of gated versus camera based. Good question. I'm not an expert here. From my understanding, park systems, if you're asking about park systems with gate arms versus park systems with LPR cameras, from my understanding, the LPR camera is just like an add-on to that additional system. Or if you're talking about park system versus just doing LPR enforcement, typically LPR enforcement is a lot cheaper. But I'm not a great expert in that one. If you knew a specific vendor, I'd happy to give you my thoughts on them.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Matt. Stephanie Regalado is wondering, is there a way the parker can receive their confirmation through email? And I know that is something we can do, but I'll let you touch on that if you want, Mel.
Yeah, and Stephanie, that is possible today. After they put their license plate into our parking portal, they have an optional field where they can enter their email. So if they do want to receive that, they can. If there are instances where they don't need to receive it, then it is completely optional. We do want to leave our flow as simple and frictionless as possible. And so right now it could just be as easy as one step entering their plate in Cooking Park, which we love.
Awesome. Thanks, Mel. Justin Santana is wondering, when will permit restrictions roll out, i.e. relocate after X amount of hours?
Good question, Justin. That will be later this year. We're actively working on the project right now, which is exciting. I'll also send you a follow-up email after this webinar. I'd love to hear more about what you're looking for and just making sure that we're building it correctly.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely don't be afraid to reach out
Awesome.
to anyone on the team if you have additional questions that you don't get in today. But I'd say for now, it doesn't look like there's any more questions in the chat. So we'll give you a minute extra of your day back here on your Friday. That is all the time kind of we'll spend on this webinar. Another huge shout out to Mel and Matt for joining us today. And my final plug here I'll make is that Offstreet has just published a 2025 Consumer Trends Report where we will dive into these trends that we chatted about today and provide advice based on where you are in your digital adoption journey. And you can kind of map out what steps to take from there. And we'll be sending that to everyone a few days after the webinar here, or you can find it on our website at joinoffstreet.com. Or even better yet, I think we'll throw up a screen here where you can scan the QR code and check out the 2025 Consumer Trends Report. But that is all the time we have for today, everybody. Thank you and have a great weekend.